In February 1945, during World War II, the leaders of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, gathered in Yalta, Crimea. Their main goal was to plan how Germany and Europe would be reorganized after the war. One of their key decisions was to track down and punish Nazi leaders for their crimes. By November 1945, an international tribunal made up of American, Soviet, British, and French judges and prosecutors began the Nuremberg Trials. Senior Nazi officials were charged with crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, including murder, enslavement, and the forced deportation of civilians. Less than a year later, on October 1, 1946, verdicts were announced. 12 out of the 22 defendants were sentenced to death by hanging. One of them was Fritz Sauckel, a key figure in the Nazi regime who oversaw a program that forced over 12 million men, women, and children into brutal slave labor under horrific conditions. Fritz Sauckel, whose full name was Ernst Friedrich Christoph Fritz Sauckel, was born on October 27, 1894, in Haßfurt, Bavaria, which was part of the German Empire at the time. He came from a modest background. His father worked at the post office and his mother was a seamstress. In 1909, at just 15 years old, he left a school without graduating and joined the Merchant Navy, working on Norwegian, Swedish, and German ships. Years later, on July 28, 1914, World War I began, changing the course of history. While many German soldiers were fighting and dying on the battlefield, 19-year-old Fritz Sauckel was captured when his cargo ship was stopped in the English Channel on its way to Australia. From August 1914 to October 20, 1919, he was held in France as an enemy prisoner. During his time in captivity, he studied mathematics, languages, and economics, while also developing strong political views, including anti-Semitism. After Germany surrendered on November 11, 1918, and World War I ended, Sauckel struggled to survive. Living in poverty as an unskilled worker, he became radicalized, blaming Jews for his misfortune and believing they needed to be fought. He later worked as an apprentice locksmith and toolmaker in a ball-bearing factory. In 1919, he joined the German Nationalist Protection and Defiance Federation, the largest anti-Semitic group in post-war Germany. The organization rejected democracy, and many of its members eventually joined the Nazi Party, including Sauckel. In January 1923, Sauckel officially became a Nazi Party member, holding membership number 1,395. The following year, he married Elisabeth Wetzel, and they had 10 children together. Over time, Sauckel climbed the ranks of the Nazi Party, gaining influence in the state of Thuringia. By 1927, he was appointed Gauleiter, regional party leader, and became a member of the Thuringian legislature. In the Thuringia state election on July 31, 1932, the Nazis won 42.5% of the vote, securing 26 seats. Sauckel became the new leading minister of state and took control of the Interior Ministry, giving him authority over the state police and security forces. Then, on January 30, 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party officially rose to power in Germany. On May 5, 1933, Fritz Sauckel was appointed Reich Governor of Thuringia, a newly created position designed to give the Nazi government more centralized control over state administrations. He held this role until May 1945. Later that year, on November 12, he became a member of the Reichstag, Germany's parliament. On September 9, 1934, Sauckel joined the SS at the invitation of Heinrich Himmler, the head of the organization, and was given the rank of SS Gruppenführer, which was equivalent to a major general. In 1936, Adolf Hitler launched the Four-Year Plan, a series of economic policies aimed at rearming Germany and making it self-sufficient by 1940. The plan prioritized military buildup, reducing unemployment, boosting synthetic fiber production, expanding public works projects, increasing automobile manufacturing, and improving the highway system. Autobahn. Within this initiative, Sauckel worked under Reich Marshal Hermann Göring, managing and allocating labor for Germany's industries and farms. By 1937, the Nazis had begun using forced labor from people they considered enemies of the state to address labor shortages. By the end of that year, most Jewish men in Germany were forced to work for various government agencies. On September 1, 1939, World War II began when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The last Polish resistance unit surrendered on October 6 of that year. Then, on May 10, 1940, Germany launched its invasion of France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands in what became known as the Battle of France. Paris fell to German forces on June 14, 1940. These military campaigns left Germany with a severe labor shortage, which Nazi leaders addressed by forcing foreign workers into labor programs. On March 21, 1942, Hitler appointed Sauckel as the General Plenipotentiary for labor deployment, giving him authority over all available manpower, including foreign workers and prisoners of war. He was instructed to manage labor under the 4-year plan. Just days later, on March 27th, Hermann Göring officially transferred control of labor recruitment to Sauckel. Later, on September 30, 1942, Hitler expanded Sauckel's power, allowing him to appoint commissioners in occupied territories and take whatever measures were necessary to enforce labor policies. After gaining full authority over labor recruitment, Fritz Sauckel launched a large-scale program to mobilize workers for Nazi Germany. A major part of this plan was the forced labor of people from occupied territories. Shortly after taking office, he ordered local authorities in these regions to enforce mandatory labor service, requiring civilians to work in Germany. To meet labor quotas, Sauckel's commissioners, supported by local police, rounded up and transported workers to Germany. Initially, the Nazis tried to recruit volunteers, but very few signed up. Within months, forced labor became the norm. In a speech on March 1, 1944, Sauckel admitted that out of 5 million foreign workers brought to Germany, fewer than 200,000 had come willingly. Most of these workers came from Eastern Europe, especially Poland and the Soviet Union, where recruitment methods were brutal. German forces raided villages, capturing people and sending them to work in Germany. In addition to civilians, Sauckel also authorized the use of prisoners of war for forced labor. Working conditions were extremely harsh, with strict discipline and little concern for workers' survival. Prisoners, especially those from concentration camps, received no pay and were given starvation-level rations, barely enough to keep them alive. This system of slave labor was widely used in industries such as coal mining, steel production, and weapons manufacturing, making forced labor a key part of the Nazi war effort. For many prisoners, being able to work meant a chance to stay alive. Those who were too weak or sick to work were often the first to be executed. The Nazis also carried out a brutal strategy called annihilation through work, where prisoners were forced into exhausting labor under conditions designed to kill them. In places like Mauthausen concentration camp, starving prisoners were made to haul heavy stones up 186 steps from a quarry, a task so extreme that many collapsed and died. As the war continued, forced labor became even more widespread. In April 1942, Albert Speer, the Minister of Armaments and War Production, established the Central Planning Board, which determined how many workers were needed across different industries. It was Fritz Sauckel's job to provide those workers, no matter the cost. He personally oversaw the labor program, traveling frequently to make sure quotas were met. He knew about the brutal methods being used to capture and transport workers and fully supported them, believing they were necessary for Germany's war effort. Sauckel was also in charge of transporting laborers to Germany, assigning them to employers, and overseeing their living conditions. However, his priority was maximizing their productivity while spending as little as possible on their care. He once stated that workers should be fed, sheltered, and treated in a way that exploits them to the highest extent at the lowest cost. At a meeting of top Nazi officials, he made his fears clear. "If we lose this war, they won't just hang me, they'll hang all of you." In total, over 12 million people were forced into labor under Sauckel's program, with many suffering abuse, starvation, and death. At its peak, slave labor made up 20% of Germany's workforce. On the 1st of July, 1944, Fritz Sauckel was appointed Supreme President of Government District Erfurt, which was merged into Thuringia after the division of the Prussian province of Saxony. As the war neared its end and Allied forces advanced, the Nazi regime resorted to desperate measures, conscripting boys under 16 and elderly men over 60 into the poorly trained and ill-equipped Volkssturm militia. Despite the inevitable defeat, thousands of these recruits were sent to their deaths. On 25 September 1944, Sauckel was put in charge of the Volkssturm forces in his district. The following month, on his 50th birthday, he received a reward of 250,000 Reichsmarks, equivalent to around $2.4 million today, for his service to the Reich. On the 10th of April 1945, just one day after declaring Weimar a fortress city and urging his militia to fight to the last man, Sauckel fled the city by car. 4 days later, American forces took Weimar, and on 8 May 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. Justice caught up with Sauckel soon after. He was arrested by U.S. Army counterintelligence agents in Salzburg on 12 May 1945. At the Nuremberg Trials, Sauckel faced charges of conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. U.S. Chief Prosecutor Robert H. Jackson called him the biggest and cruelest slave owner since the Egyptian pharaohs. Sauckel, however, insisted that he had only been responsible for labor allocation and denied involvement in the atrocities committed against forced laborers. He claimed he had always advocated for humane treatment and blamed any mistreatment on translation errors in his testimony. On the 1st of October 1946, the International Military Tribunal found Sauckel guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. He was sentenced to death by hanging, a verdict that left him in tears. He struggled to comprehend why Albert Speer, the Minister of Armaments who had constantly demanded more laborers from him, had received only a prison sentence while he faced execution. Sauckel was hanged on 16 October 1946 by U.S. Army executioner John C. Woods, who reportedly lacked professional experience as a hangman. His execution, like many others that day, was botched. His drop was too short to break his neck, leading to slow strangulation. Sauckel took 14 agonizing minutes to die, convulsing on the gallows. When summoned for his final moments, he refused to dress properly, appearing disheveled in a sweater with no coat. His last words were a mix of denial and nationalism. "I die an innocent man, my sentence is unjust. God, protect Germany. May it live and one day become great again. God, protect my family. I pay my respects to U.S. soldiers and officers, but not to U.S. Jews." Following his execution, Sauckel's body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered into the Vensbach, a small tributary of the river Isar, ensuring that no grave would mark his final resting place. Sergeant John C. Woods later insisted that he had carried out all executions correctly and expressed pride in his work. Joseph Malta, the U.S. Army military policeman who assisted with the executions, echoed similar sentiments decades later, stating, "It was a pleasure doing it. I'd do it all over again." There were no tears shed for Fritz Sauckel. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.